The truth.
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 Welcome to Trusting the Truth with Samuel Tolley, where we view the world through the lens of Jesus Christ. We do not view Jesus Christ through the lens of the world. How you doing? This is Sam Tolley with Trusting the Truth. And today I'm going to mission panel regarding Southern Poverty Law Center. This organization that claims to represent people that are being disenfranchised, are being harmed, are being persecuted by racists. This organization for years has maintained that they are here to help the minorities, to help those that the Aryan Nation, the Ku Klux Klan, white, any type of white supremacist groups are presenting problems. And yet, on April the 21st, an indictment, this 14-page indictment by the United States government was filed against the Southern Poverty Law Center. And this indictment is amazing on the face of it. And actually, in a nutshell, what this indictment is stating is that the Southern Poverty Law Center paid organizations like the Klan, like the Aryan Nation, like any other white supremacist group that they can find, paid them, in fact, to foster or foment racist activities. I mean, it's amazing when you go through this document. These people who say one thing seem to be representing something completely different. Now, I want to start with Pastor Reed, and I want to get his take on what he's heard about this situation.
Well, one of the things that is very, I guess, non-surprising is how they were able to use the plight of African Americans to advance themselves financially and their friends politically. And the community, the Black community itself has not advanced, but everybody who's talking about helping us to advance, they did. And so it's evil to to hire the devil to do the devil's stuff, you know. And but that's I think what has happened is that all of this TDS they got going on, the emotions are coming to the forefront, and they're telling the truth without even knowing they're telling the truth. And we're finding out now about what they have done over the years. The Southern Poverty Law Center, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-God, pretty much anti-Jewish, and but they were able to raise lots and lots of money because of the racial issues that we are finding out now that they helped start. And it's
Uh-oh. Looks like
it's evil.
we had an issue with Pastor Reed there. Let me go to BB. BB, I heard that these people, it says on page 3 of the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, the Southern Poverty Law Center secretly funneled more than $3 million to different individuals from these various violent extremist groups. This is amazing. What do you got to say about this stuff?
Well, I think, with the Southern Poverty Law Center, fun fact, I went to school in Montgomery, Alabama years ago, Huntington College, and one of the girls went there. Her father worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center, so I actually went there. There is a physical place where they operate, but with regard to the indictment, it's striking to me that they were paying people in the Aryan Nation, the Klan, and other supremacist groups to foment the violence so they can claim, oh, America is so racist. They want to demonize, as you said, or Pastor Reed said, Christian or Jewish organizations, but primarily Christian organizations that stand for family, that stand for righteousness. It's totally outrageous, and I'm glad that President Trump's Department of Justice, this is part of the executive branch, that they've done the indictment, they've done the investigation, and will get to the truth about the Southern Poverty Law Center. They have been anti-American, anti-Christian for years. But to know that they were, or alleged that it's been alleged that they've been paying these racist groups, white supremacist groups, to foment violence so they can have this, so they can then beg for more money is outrageous. And again, as Pastor Reed said so perfectly, so brilliantly, everyone else has benefited, but Black people, we have not benefited. So thank you, and thank you for having us on your program. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Bill, it's amazing. Um, I've had issues wondering about the Southern Poverty Law Center in the last few years because I heard them going after people, pretty much conservatives, people that, more biblical minded. But these folks, obviously, there's a big time scam. And they talk about how we don't take government money, we just take money from people that are dedicated to helping them do their service. And it seemed like it's just a flim flam scam, big time. What say you?
The Southern Poverty Law Center has been anti-Christian from the beginning. It was founded by a lawyer years ago named Morris Dees, and he was a flag-carrying communist. And their big thing was separation of church and state. Well, one of their big things. And they just made themselves experts at getting into every issue where they could divide America. And what we're seeing with this, with them getting caught funneling money to the white supremacist groups, is the Democrat Party is scared spitless that racism might disappear in America because that would eliminate half of their political agendas. The Democrat Party cannot survive without instigating racism everywhere they can. So, yeah, I am not at all surprised that the Southern Poverty Law Center got caught paying people to go out and do racist incidents. So nothing surprises me anymore. And they've been exposed now. The question is, will people who have been supporting the Southern Poverty Law Center finally walk away from them? That's what I'm waiting to see. What's going to happen now?
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Dr. Tarver, one of the things that I'm finding, well, I don't find it surprising, but it's like, okay, where's Al? Where's Bryant? Where's all these so-called Black leaders that are standing up and screaming racism all the time? Where are these jokers? How come? I mean, maybe you've heard about them complaining about how they flim flam Black folks. I haven't.
They keep silent in the face of things. In 2019, this is important for the viewers. The Southern Poverty Law Center was rocked by internal allegations of racism, sexism, and discrimination from its own employees. They had 24 staff members sign a letter warning that allegations of mistreatment, sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and racism. And then former employees described the workplace culture where Black employees and women face unequal treatment. One employee described the organization as have unchecked power and lavishly compensated white men at the top. Then it hit a crescendo when the co-founder Morris Dees, was fired amid misconduct allegations, and multiple top executives resigned afterwards. Reports indicated Black employees complained that the people of color were pushed out, denied advancement, removed from leadership, and forced to leave for discrimination. Now, this was 2019, and this is the first I'm hearing about it. But it happened, and the leadership was forced to resign because of racial discrimination. But Black folks covered it and allowed still for the Southern Poverty Law Center to equate a Moms for America group that I was part of as a hate group alongside Nazis, alongside the KKK, and alongside these real hate groups. And because they had the audacity to bring in Christian groups, moms, Republicans, conservatives, and people, Faith and Freedom Coalition and others were attacked at gunpoint. And the gunman who attacked the offices indicated that he was inspired by the Southern Poverty Law Center website. So I will tell you that the timeline of this is that a grand jury in April 2026 returned an 11-count indictment, which is only just a charge, not a conviction, for the Southern Poverty Law Center for $3 million in payments to informants connected to extremist organizations like the KKK and neo-Nazis, of which many stayed in the organization. They said that they paid undercover informants, but they ended up staying in the organization. And then they used shell companies to stop us from trying to find out where the money and the contributions went. They're considered, they were charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and false statements to banks. And that is part of their court filings. And so the organization is may have started, like the NAACP and others, may have started with good intentions, but they have since gone awry. They've turned into a political arm of the Democrat Party, and they are just as demonic as the party and the devil that they serve. And that is how I feel about it. And I believe that the insider scoop and the indictments was the help of the Black folks that actually worked there and saw it. They mistreated the Black people who were there in 2019, and I believe they went back and got where the bodies are buried, and that is how they were exposed. But the word of God says that we are not to partake or participate with the acts of wickedness, but to expose them. And I believe that that is what this is about, is the exposure of these cherished quote civil rights organizations, and what neither civil and neither right organizations, and they have become again a political arm of the Democrat Party.
All right, Dr. Tarver, I appreciate that. Let me go see if I can get past the read back. How you doing,
Can you
sir?
hear me?
I hear you fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Dr. Tarver. You know, one of the reasons why you don't find people like Al and others in the African American community raising sand about it is because their names are on some of those council checks.
That's what I've been waiting. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I wanna see that one.
Yeah. So you you don't want to destroy your benefactor, and so because one of the things that has been a basic problem of mine is when you see all of this devastation in our community, and you see some of the people who look like us who are silent, and they have chosen to put all their energies toward fighting for the illegals, but not the legal African Americans. And the question you got to ask is why. And the reason why is our community, the Black community in America, is in decline. the Mexican American community is growing, and so are the Asian community. They're growing, and so now they're going after those people. And Southern Poverty Law Center has used us for what 50 years to advance their wicked, anti-Christ, anti-God agenda. And it seems like everybody want to use African Americans to advance their cause. And what we have to do is stand up and start just telling the truth and letting people know, and at the cost of losing friends, and that's just the way it has to be, because uh, we can't keep allowing people to use us as though we are absolutely nothing, and and treat us like we're nothing in order to advance their own political and their financial agendas. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about that money and power, and they need us. They need to uh, uh, point out the poverty in the black community, and that's why they keep just try to keep us poor, sorting it out so they can give money to us, an organization that's supposed to help us. The community hadn't changed in 50 years in many times, in many instances, and so what needs to happen is more of these groups need to be exposed. I always say, what happened to the NAACP? What are they doing for African American people? You know, and so we don't have people who say they represent us. Many times they don't represent us; they represent themselves.
You're so true. It's amazing. I'll put a picture up on the screen for everybody to see for a second, so you guys won't see each other. I did this show last week called "The Black Church and the Devil." Now, I wasn't saying that Obama was a devil. I was talking about the black church pretty much is in line with the devil. The picture of President Obama here is this Bishop Thomas Masters. I grew up with Bishop Masters. When he first did this picture, you can see Obama has black hair. When they took that picture when Obama was president years ago, I wrote him and asked him to justify his position and how could he stand with a man that at that point in time he wasn't for same-sex marriage, but he was for abortion and whatnot. Now he never responded to my letter, and he was at the time he was in um, Riviera, Florida, which he still is. Has a church out there. He was mayor of that area at one time. I just, but at this time when I did this show, I put it out there again, and I asked him again, and I even tagged him. Just like every now and then, I'll get some black representative. Well, I call him a representative. Somebody that's defending the Democrat Party. And I've asked them, each one of these people that would attack me, so like this last guy, I don't remember who he was. He said, "Oh, Obama was the greatest president we ever had." I said, "Would you like to come on the show and defend President Obama?" Every time I ask these people to come on the show to defend them standing up for the Democrat Party and whatnot, it's like turn the lights on and roaches are in there. They scatter. I mean, they disappear. I can never get any of them to come out of the shadows and defend the nonsense that they accept. And that's why I'm looking at this thing here. And I would love for an indictment. I would love for Cash Boutel or somebody else to come out and say, "Yeah, we got checks with Al's name on it, or Bryant's, or any of these shysters. I call them shysters, who gets in these pulpits and claim they represent Christ." Now, I don't think these people are going to let a check come strictly in their name. But BB, like Dr. Tarver was talking about, they made all these shell corporations, different weird, and they're so creative. They had one with the initials CIA, but it wasn't the CIA. You think you'd be able to come up with a better name that or initial that CIA, and they call it the Center Investigative Agency. You know, they had other shell corporations with just weird names that they were moving money back and forth. But for years, these people, they sit over here and they act like they're going to help us, when at the same time they're not helping us. They're helping the folks keep us down. But it seems to me, BB, that many minority or particularly Black Democrats have been so blinded by pride that they just accept anything. They remind me of battered housewives. Oh, he beats the hell out of me, but he only does it because he loves me. Let me unmute you, BB. Get your response to what I have to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Those who still support the Democratic Party, after all that's been exposed, they are anti-American, they are anti-Christian, and all of this. The people still support them who claim to be Christians. They're not really Christians. And why would you support a party that keeps using you and abusing you? They have used the Black community, right? They treat us, they don't want us to prosper. If we don't prosper, it keeps them in business. They don't want us to flourish. So they want to encourage single-headed households. And this is one of the problems in our community. The Black community is not suffering just from broken homes. And I say this often, we suffer from dysfunctional homes. The key difference is this. You have a young lady, Shanquelle. She has 10 kids, 5 of them by different men, okay? They don't know their fathers. They're going to school angry. The teachers can't discipline them because the mothers will come there and curse them out. They'll sue the school district. So the teachers pass the children. They're not reading at the level, but pass them to get them out of their classrooms. The Democratic Party has no problem with this. They have no problem that our children are not being properly educated. They benefit by keeping us as an underclass. More of us are moving toward the Republican Party, toward Donald Trump specifically, because we're now realizing we don't have to be an underclass. We can actually do better. The Democrats don't want that. They want to keep pulling us back toward a life of dysfunction and poverty. We live in the greatest country the world has ever seen, with all kinds of opportunities. Illegals know it. That's why they're trying to get over here. Illegals of all colors. But the Democratic Party needs that underclass for power and for money. And they want to foment racism. That's what the SPLC, that's what we're discussing now, because that's how they make their money. That's how they can demonize us. That's their job, to demonize the United States. So we have the rise of Marxism. Then we'll be more okay with communism. There's a lot going on with this, and I hope we have a part 2 of this, because the psychology they have done, the psychological damage they've done to the Black community is almost incalculable. It is horrible. So thank you again for this topic. I mean, there's more to say about the Southern Poverty Law Center. It exposed the hypocrisy of the liberal Malcolm X, whom I do not like, but he warned us about the white liberal, and we're seeing that come to pass or to fruition at this time. Thank you.
You know, Dr. Tarver, I want to stick with what we were just talking about a second, like what BB was saying. And I remember a little while earlier, I think it was off camera, where you were talking about 85% of the kids in Detroit couldn't read, I believe it was. I remember when I was raising my kids, there was 2 instances that really stuck to my brain. Well, one I didn't find out until my youngest son was an adult. The first one was with my oldest son, and I was getting on it. They had a thing at this time in the schools called whole reading or some nonsense, where they didn't require punctuation, or they wasn't teaching people how to punctuate and how to write properly. And I asked him, what the heck is this? I said, you need to be able to, make periods and quotation marks and do everything you need to do to spell right and do something. And so he said, Dad, you trying to make me act like a white person. I said, I'm trying to make you learn how to make some money when you grow up. I'm trying to teach you the language that's going to help you take care of yourself. I know this nonsense you're talking about making you like you're white, but this was the psychology they were throwing out at people. Now, my youngest son, he told me something when he was an adult that he wouldn't tell me when I was a kid. He said, "Yeah, Dad, they used to make fun of me at school because I had a mother and a father." And I said, it blew my mind when he told me that. I said, I wish you would have told me that then. I said, the reason why they're making fun of you is because they wish they were you. And when you have this kind of attitude ingrained in people, it seems like they will accept any kind of punishment that comes their way. How else could you have an 85% illiteracy rate and folks still locked in to voting Democrat, Dr. Tarver?
So, well, that's a lot to put in there. I think that while we were talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Democrat Party should be considered a hate group. And I do mean a hate group. They are responsible for illiteracy and have been since the founding of our nation and since their founding as a party. They're the group that decided that Black slaves should not learn how to read, because if you teach them how to read, then they will eventually become free. And that sentiment, the Jim Crow laws, the KKK, the segregation, the agenda to hold Black people down is a hate group. And the Southern Poverty Law Center should have designated that entire organization, the pro-abortion, the killing and annihilation of Black babies in the womb under the Negro Project, and you would go on and on and on. That group is a hate group. The Democrat Party is the largest, most well-funded hate group in America that is funded by the people that they are killing and annihilating. And yet, we see them flaunt the fact that they have allowed this to occur. The Mississippi Miracle was in 2014. Mississippi was 49th in the nation. 49th in the nation in 2014. Republicans took over. And today, with Republican leadership in Mississippi, they are 16th in the nation. Michigan is 44th in the nation. We went from 24th.
In what were you talking about? Education?
In educational standards and outcomes, yes.
Wow.
They were 49th in the nation in 2014. And under Republican leadership in Mississippi, all the statewide are Republican. All the state House and Senate are Republican. All of their districts are Republican in Mississippi. And in education, they went from 49th in the nation, one from the last, to the 16th. Michigan went under Democrat leadership in 2018 from 34th in the nation to 44th in the nation under Democrat-controlled leadership since 2018. And so when we talk about hate groups and hate crimes, I put out, when I ran for State Board of Education, I bought some crime scene tapes because that is what we're seeing in our education system today under Democrat control. Everything they touch is based in hatred, racism, discrimination, steal, kill, and destroy. And we know who the father of that is. We know who the author of that is. And so all of these groups that still aligned with the devil are still dealing with the issues that we're dealing with today. NAACP, founded by a white woman and a white man, and yet you will not hear that amongst the young people who joined that crazy organization. They don't know their history. They talk about HBCUs like it's been Black only. They don't even know that Howard University, Howard is Otis Howard, a white Republican. They don't know that. You've got the schools down in Georgia. You got these HBCUs down in Georgia, founded by all white Republicans. And you've got these people who attend them who cannot read. Black students who attend them don't read up on their history, don't even read up on the history of their school. That the Republican Rockefeller's wife, founded the all girls college down in Georgia, and
Spelman.
Republicans founded these HBCUs. But they don't want to deal with the history. They don't want to deal with truth. And so what we're dealing with is people who choose to believe the lie. And the word of God says, when you choose to believe the lie, the Lord will place you under a strong delusion. There are some people, Brother Tolly, that we are not going to be able to get and reach because they're under a strong delusion. They choose to believe the lie. And we've got people in the head of these organizations that believe the lie they've been peddling and selling for all these decades. And that's all I have to say.
I say, oh, Pastor Reed, we can't see you, but if you're there, you can
I can
chime
see you
in.
guys. Can you hear
All
me?
right. We can hear you fine. We just can't see you, but you can still chime in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that took me off to what was going on years ago. I was an avid football fan and played it for 11 years. And what really shocked me was a guy named Dexter Manley. He won Super Bowl rings with the Washington Redskins. He was an All Pro defensive tackle. Went through high school, went through college, and graduated. Got drafted by the Redskins. Had all of that success, but he couldn't read.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, now how did this guy make it through high school, make it through 4 years of college, and he couldn't read? Because there's such a thing called social promotion. You got to have so many blacks be promoted in contradistinction to the whites. Instead of merit, it's social promotion. And so, and then teachers, because they are stressed because the school systems don't back them up, many of them, and they'll promote a kid just to get rid of them. I don't want to deal with that this year again. So I'm gonna send him on up to the sixth grade, even though he's not academically astute enough to be in the fourth grade. But that's
Mm.
how things have happened over the years, and we have allowed the teachers unions to buy off our politicians and our civil rights leaders, and they're getting money. And I remember when Jeb Bush was criticized when he was governor of Florida. Uh, he said that Floridians kids had to make a 49 in order to move on to the next grade. So promoting. I mean, some of the black groups came
49.
against 49.
That ain't even 50%.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And some of the black groups came against him. I mean, they was ferocious and vicious. And I'm saying, wait a minute. A kid got to make a 49 to pass.
Wait a minute. They
That's
were
a yeah.
mad because he wanted a 49, or they were mad because that's all he settled for?
Well, they were mad because they wanted him to have it even less than that.
Oh, good night.
And I'm saying, wait a minute. So you see, we got people who look like us
Mm.
who really don't like us. See, we only look good to them when it helps their color green past their bank accounts. That's what it's really about. As my sister was saying, they don't want to see us succeed
Mm.
because you need a dependent group of people to continue to look to you as the savior. And so as long as we continue to look to them to help us out, okay, they're never going to help us out. What did the temptation say? Vote for me, I'll set you free.
Yeah.
And they said, rap on, brother. Rap on, which means you ain't gonna do nothing about it. You're just gonna talk all that smack, but you ain't gonna do nothing about it. And that's what has happened. Okay. Nothing has really happened to us uh, uh, um, in a positive way in the last 50 years.
Mm-mm.
When Jimmy Carter started the Department of Education
Mm.
started going down here.
Democrat.
Yeah,
Democrat.
yeah. See, because I think the Department of Education started in 1979. Now I graduated high school in '76, so I was not a part of that. And we had many black kids graduating on time in high schools.
That's
I
right.
had my hometown years, some years after that, my hometown. They had about maybe 400 or 500 kids graduating, only 55 black males
Mm,
out of that. I'm saying something is absolutely wrong. Okay. And so we have to start looking at these candidates not based on color. Okay. Because just because you're my color don't mean you're my kind. And many times they feel like we owe them because they look like us.
mm.
But if you look like me and robbing me, I'm still not going to befriend you because you're taking from me now. Okay,
Right.
and so that's what a lot of these politicians have done. They've taken our vote for granted, and they're not representing us in California and Atlanta. And I was shocked. I was absolutely flabbergasted that John Lewis had one of the poorest districts in Atlanta, Georgia. He's a civil rights leader.
Hmm.
Had one of the poorest districts in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm saying, well, where has he been? What was he doing?
I think maybe that's why he had one of the poorest districts because he was a civil rights leader,
Hmm.
and that's the handle they use. And they ain't really about rights; they're about, like I said, keeping power. But let me hold you off for 1 second. One of the things uh, I think there is one entity that encompasses everything democratic. And you know, I know we started off talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center and morphed into the Democrat Party, but I think the Southern Poverty Law Center, like I think Dr. Tara sort of alluded to, is pretty much just part of this entity of the Democrat Party. But there's one entity that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that makes, I believe, all this stuff possible. And as excuse me, Bibi was referring to earlier, when she mentioned Malcolm X. Malcolm X talked about the news media. Uh, they got the power to make you or break you, essentially. And if we had a real media that was really for the people, um, we didn't knew about the Southern Poverty Law Center a long time ago. There would be complaints about why the schools are not educating people. You know, a whole lot of the nonsense that we're putting up with or we're dealing with, we wouldn't have to deal with it because the news media would do their job. I always called them uh, the uh, well, the fourth branch of government, or like I would say, the referee. Their job is to call balls and strikes. Their job is to let us know exactly how the three branches of government are operating, if they're doing right, if they're doing wrong, or whatever. And unfortunately, we've got to a point where they seem like they're completely sold out. So these people help facilitate all the garbage that helps keep the black community in particular and American in general ignorant of what's going on. What say you, BB? Let me make sure you're open. Yeah, you're good.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The news media's job, as you said, it used to do investigative reporting, to report what's going on and not to shield that type of information from the American public. And yet it seems that's exactly what they've done. They've covered up, like they refuse to report the Christians being murdered in Nigeria by Muslims. You see it more on X, you see it on social media platforms, but you do not see the mainstream media reporting on that. The mainstream media is not doing its job. what is going on if the indictment stands and the Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted. If they get convicted, it will expose the American media once again as just being, I don't know, Satan's helper, if you will, just whatever Hollywood said, whatever the Democrats say. That's what they're largely reporting. It's like controlled media. They're not looking for the truth. They want to make the Democrats look okay, the Republicans look evil, essentially. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the kind of media we have in this country. So a lot of these important stories are not being put out there. The investigations that should be done are not being done, and the American people aren't aware of this. And I'm just grateful that President Trump won the election in November 2024, because this stuff would have never come to light. The situation with Act Blue, with Democrats, they went crazy when the Doji, Elon Musk the organization he was over, that went through.
Uh-oh. A lot of people are thinking about TV. My goodness, we can't hear her.
Yeah.
And she's on a tear.
Terry,
She is on a tear. You can mute. Yeah. Just
Oh,
let her
sorry
know.
about that. But
It's
yeah,
okay.
it's just, you are absolutely right. The Democrat Party. Yeah, I went on a tear, and that's why I want to do a part two, because I think what you tapped in here, brother Tolly, is something important, something I'd like for us to expand on, maybe in another program, because the American people need to hear this. The American media have not, since media is a plural word, have not been doing their job. They're kowtowing to the Democrats, to Hollywood, to certain, celebrities, whatever, but they have a script, it seems like. They won't report on certain issues. They won't report on certain people because they tip their hand to the left, to the liberals, to the Democratic Party. So we're not getting the truth. Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. Yeah, Pastor Reed. I think if I could correct BB a little bit, I think they are doing their job. They're just not doing the job the American people expect them to do. They're doing the job that they're paid to misdirect. It's funny. I remember growing up in Pasadena, California, and during the Cold War. Uh, I remember saying, "Golly, those people in Russia, they got Pravda. They're getting all this communist news, and we got a free press. So, when I got my Independent Star News or the L.A. Times or the Herald Examiner, or I turned on Jerry Dumpley or Chit Huntley or listen to Walter Cronkite or any of these folks, I was getting the news. I was getting the real information." And and then when I got older, I started saying, "Hey, a lot of this stuff ain't real. They're lying through their teeth." Then it made me start wondering, have they been lying to me all my life? When I'm thinking that the Russians are getting lied to, have they been lying to Sam? Go ahead, Pastor Reed.
well, one of the things that I'm a history buff. I love it, and I remember watching the military channel years ago, and they interviewed the North Vietnamese commander, General Job. I think his name was General Job. After the war was over, and they asked him a question. They said to General Job, "How were you able to defeat the mighty American military machine?" His answer was very startling. He said, "Bullet for bullet, man for man, weaponry against weaponry. There was no way we could do it." I said, "Well, how did you do it?" He said, "Well, we knew that there were professors in those universities who thought like we thought. So we started funneling money to those institutions
Mm.
and to those professors, and they began to teach uh, our propaganda and turn the young people against the war. And when they got the young people turned against the war, then things started happening where the American people are looking for a way out now. Okay, so what has happened is with the news media, most of them have been trained in Marxism. Okay, and Marxism needs a permanent underclass. It won't work without it. Okay, you gotta have the proletariat, and you gotta demonize the bourgeoisie. I was telling some people, I said, listen, man, uh, they were talking about, this wealth gap and all this kind of stuff, and the rich people need to pay more taxes. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Where do you shop at? Kroger. All right, you tax Kroger more money. What's going to happen? Your eggs going to go up. Your meat going to go up because they're going to pass that cost on to you and on to us. But see, that's because the Marxists always like to uh, a rose on stank, and and say don't, it really smells good. You need to buy that. And so the media has adopted this Marxist philosophy because that's how they've been educated. They've been trained, not in verb subject agreement, but they've been trained in how to turn people's opinions and thoughts a certain way, and so that's why they isolate, and uh, they magnify. I think somebody said today on this program earlier. I think it was my sister Bibi who said, they're killing Christians in Nigeria, and nobody is saying a word about it. All you got to do is flip it. If you flip it and say Christians are killing Muslims in Nigeria, that's breaking news.
Mhm.
It's front page news. Okay, because to them we are expendable, and many people don't understand what a Marxist is. Give me just a minute. I'm gonna give you the basic tenets of Marxism that a lot of people don't realize. Number one, you got to take from the rich and give to the poor. You got to take from the bourgeoisie and give to the poor. We already know that. Okay. Then you got to have all your economic businesses become under the ward of the state. Okay, they're going, but the state owns everything. That's what they've been trying to. That's why Washington D.C. Everybody in Washington D.C. was progressing, and everybody outside of Washington D.C. was in depression. The government was huge, and thirdly, he says, you got to make sure that the children come under the ward of the state, so that teachers become the parents, and parents become the children. And so a kid can go and say, listen, I want to transition from a boy to a girl, and the teacher can give permission to do that, irregardless of what the parent thinks. Okay. I'm glad President Trump is stopping that kind of nonsense. And then Mark says this. He says, listen, none of this will ever work. None of what I just told you will ever work until you get God out of the public square. You got to fix it where people cannot talk about God in the public arena. Anytime you talk about God nowadays, like right now in the White House, they got prayer in the White House. They got prayer in the Pentagon, and you thought they made, a pact with the devil from the news media standpoint. But that's what's happening now. And so Marxists now are pastoring churches. If you notice now, a lot of these guys that are pastoring these churches have adopted the Marxist philosophy. And so they're coming against everything that God is for, and they're embracing everything that God is against. And until people realize what's really happening, they don't realize what they're doing is they're building their own jail cell, and don't realize after it finally finishes, they're going to put them in it.
Wow, that's deep.
It
Uh,
is.
Dr.
Amen. Can
Carl,
I can I just bring up a real quick correlation to the Southern Poverty Law Center
go
and the
ahead.
connection? So our Secretary of State here, Democrat elected Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, worked on the board or sat on the board for the Southern Poverty Law Center in Alabama. She also worked as a an investigator or agent or undercover. I'm not sure what her role was prior to being seated on the board in at 2014. This is the time that all of these things went on. It is also the time that they are investigating starting from 2014, where the current Secretary of State here in Michigan and now the candidate for Michigan governor is now running for governor from Secretary of State. She sat on the Southern Poverty Law Center board. Now, it didn't say anything that she did anything wrong, but here's the pattern. There was discrimination against Black people from the Southern Poverty Law Center. It was held quiet. 2019, it was exposed, and people resigned as a result. But with this Secretary of State who's running, she settled for $750,000 racial discrimination lawsuit against one black employee in the Secretary of State's office. $750,000 that the taxpayers have to pay for her settling a racial discrimination lawsuit. And now we've got 3 other lawsuits against her for racial discrimination and racial hostile working environment. And what the Democrats do, and I blame them all, the Democrats will cover for your racists. They cover for their racial discrimination. They want to point at, Donald Trump with no evidence. But they got evidence against the Southern Poverty Law Center. They've got evidence against Jocelyn Benson, who's the Secretary of State of Michigan, who settled a suit for $750,000 for a settlement for racial discrimination. And they want to keep it quiet. And I'm really tired of it. I'm tired that the taxpayers have to pay for it. And that is the connection to Michigan with the Southern Poverty Law Center. I hope that the Black folks here will not continue to vote for racists and putting them in, and continue to vote for hate groups like the Democrat Party.
Wow, yeah, that's deep. There was something that Pastor Reed said that struck me. And I'll let anybody sort of respond to this, including you, Pastor, if you want. When you were talking about the Marxists, they want to go after. They need the Politburo. They need the bourgeoisie to be the bad guy, but the Divine Nine, aren't they the bourgeoisie? And all these folks are the ones that's running these churches, like Bryant and all these people. They're part of that Black bourgeoisie that's fermenting and keeping the crap going.
Well, listen. China is a communist country, but China has embraced capitalist economics. Okay, those pastors, they get rich off of capitalism, all the while preaching Marxism. Okay, because it doesn't touch them. They can pay their rent, they can pay their light bill, they can pay their car note, they can put $5 gas in their car. A lot of people can't do that, and they live in exclusive neighborhoods. And so again, that's a part of the flim flam. I'm preaching against poverty, all the while living the flamboyant life and making Black people think you can't do any better because the white man is keeping you down. And so as a result, people settle for that, and they continue to blame me. How long are we going to continue to do that? I've been hearing that stuff since I was a kid.
My people perish because of lack of knowledge. And when you do not educate them, then you cannot lead. You can lead them astray. You can lead them anywhere you want to. Put a hook on their nose and lead them where you want them to, because they cannot read. They cannot read. They cannot comprehend. They were not educated. And that is how you keep them dumb. When you got people who cannot read, then they don't know how the pathway to become free. They
Amen.
don't have the path for freedom to read the things that they need to read.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why
true.
it is so important to be able to teach your children, your children's children. Slaves learned how to read. And then you get today's little highfalutin $40,000 New York education, and they still can't read. $40,000. And you still can't read in New York, Detroit, 15, 18, $20,000 a child. And they are still illiterate, more illiterate than what their grandparents were. And I'm just trying to understand. And that is the issue with, we've got the hate group called the Democrat Party.
Well,
They
as we get
kill
ready
black
to,
babies in the womb.
we about to run out of time.
That's
Um,
that's
and,
it. That's
and I
all I
just
want
want
to
to,
say.
okay, and I just want to give BB a minute before we get out of here. But it seems to me that for black folks to keep continuously staying in this mess and getting screwed over like this, the only word that comes to my mind is pride. And the Bible says pride before the fall. Go ahead, BB.
I just want to say this. Thank you for this time very quickly. I don't want black people to I want them to stop saying, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. They say that on Sunday, but then the rest of the week, they want to blame white man. They take in that language, oh, it's a white man. That's why we're not progressing. The problem is with us. If we don't address it and face it, we cannot fix it. And going to the bourgeoisie, the divine nine, no, they will not be attacked by the communists and left because they're pushing the communists and leftist garbage in the churches and stuff. So they can drive their Cadillacs and this and that and go to their luxury hotels. They won't be attacked by the left because they're spewing the left's garbage. So the left they'll be safe. The Jamal Bryants, they will be safe, but they're doing the devil's work. The rest of us will suffer, but I pray that we can educate more black people to vote not to vote against socialism, which the Democratic Party is for. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being on the show. And I think we will have to pick up on this topic, and particularly on this news media and how they continue to help the flim flam going. So, with that said, this is Sam Tolley for the Mordecai Mission and Trusted Truth saying that we're out.